Hello everyone and welcome to UnWine with Janet. Today I will be making for you what I consider a delicacy when growing up in Jamaica. I will be cooking for you slow braised oxtail with butter beans. Let me tell you, when I knew that oxtail would be cooking for Sunday dinner, I got happy from the day before. It was a treat to know that we were gonna have it for our Sunday dinner. Back then, it was normally prepared either on holidays or on Sundays along with rice and peas. The Jamaican version of oxtail is reminiscent of the African one-pot tradition used by the slaves and the Maroons on the island as early as the mid-1500s. They might have done it differently back then, but come let me show you how we do it. Welcome back. Here I have displayed for you most of the seasonings and spices that I will be using for my very simple and easy oxtail recipe. I will only be using a small Irish potato, garlic powder, salt, mixed seasoning, black pepper, thyme, onion powder, paprika, ginger paste, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and a tablespoon of browning, and in my bowl is a combination of additional vegetables and herbs, namely carrots, tomato, bell pepper, half of an onion, scotch bonnet pepper, garlic, scallion, and thyme. Now I have my freshly washed oxtail and I use a little vinegar to assist with this process. I also went ahead and trimmed some of the excess fat from it. Sometimes you might be lucky to find some beautiful pieces, but if not, we just have to work with what we've got, right? From here on, I'll be adding all my powdered seasoning, and I'm just using a little of my all-purpose seasoning and also a little bit of my garlic powder. I'll be doing the same thing with the paprika, just a little bit, and the black pepper as well. Here I will only be using some of my onion powder. And this is a tablespoon of thyme. I'm gonna use everything. This is a tablespoon also of ginger paste. And I'm using ginger paste because of that wonderful flavor that it gives to just about everything. I've combined both my soy sauce and my browning just to save time. And I use a tablespoon of browning. You have to be careful not to use too much because the end product can be very bitter or too dark, and you don't want that. Last but not least, I have half a teaspoon of salt, but if you realize I didn't add everything. Now after that, you're just gonna give it a good rub and to make sure that all the seasoning have been combined. I usually add some oil to my meat whenever I'm seasoning because it assists with the absorption of the seasoning more quickly, especially if you don't have time for that long marinating period. After you're through seasoning, you can either cover and refrigerate overnight, or you can let it sit for at least an hour in the refrigerator, or as usual, if you don't have that time, you can cook it just as is. Now it's time to prepare all my other vegetables and herbs, and as usual, I simply rough cut them all. I did not include them along with the season of the oxtail. If I was going to have it marinating overnight, then I would, so that all the flavors would be able to seep into the meat. In this case, I will be cooking the oxtail immediately after seasoning. But if you choose to include it while you're seasoning your oxtail, that's quite okay also. I remember back in the days, my mom would cook it on what we call a wood fire. My father would go to get pimento wood or any type of dry wood from nearby for her to use to build the fire. At that time, we had a detached kitchen from the main house. That's where all the cooking would take place. That's where I actually learned to cook by standing on building blocks because the firewall was a bit too high for me to reach the pot. I can remember my first dish was ackee and saltfish, and that was something. We had a very huge ackee tree in the yard, and we'd just go and get the ackee from there and prepare it for dinner. I think one day I'll most likely prepare that for you just so you can see how it's done. For the scotch bonnet pepper, you can either drop a whole scotch bonnet in the pot for flavor, or you can cut them in pieces. So remember, the seed is where the spiciness is, so if you do not want too much spiciness, then just use some of the skin, just like what I'm doing. And for the tomato, I'm just gonna use a half of it. I'll just probably leave a little piece for my salad, or we can use it to season another meat. In the end, this is what my bowl will look like with all my chopped up vegetables and herbs. Okay, so after all the preparation has been done, now it's time for the fun to begin. So you can see how simple and easy this Jamaican oxtail recipe is. In a heated skillet, you're going to add 3 tablespoons of oil, and you can use any oil. Coconut oil is my favorite. It gives the best flavor. I'm adding my pieces individually because I want them to be seared on both sides. Some people dump everything all at once, but I prefer to pan sear each piece. It makes the dish look more appealing to the eyes because, as the saying goes, we eat with our eyes, right? You will sear both sides on medium heat for at least 3 to 5 minutes, or until it's golden brown. When you sear, it locks the flavor inside, and in this case, because so much water will be introduced during cooking, the last thing you want is a bland tasting oxtail. It also adds to that beautiful brown color in the end. After both sides have been browned, you are going to pour a generous amount of hot water to cover all the pieces. Oxtail normally takes anywhere between 2 to 3 hours when slow cooking on stovetop. If you have a pressure cooker, then that's more time efficient. But if not, hey, go ahead and use your stovetop, just like what I'm doing. You will have to keep checking the water level and adding more water, and also checking for tenderness throughout the entire process. When it's semi-tender like this, that's when you're going to add all your veggies, potatoes, and herbs. I'm using Irish potato because the starch will assist with creating the gravy. It's optional if you don't want to and prefer to prepare a little cornstarch mixture. And remember, for that cornstarch mixture, you don't need a lot, just a little, because a little goes a long way. And after that, I'm also going to be adding 2 tablespoons of ketchup to the pot, just for additional flavor. That's one thing, when I'm cooking, the more flavor, the better. You're going to stir that in and then add a little bit more hot water if you need to. Remember those leftover powdered seasoning? I'm going to use them to reseason the pot. You will definitely need to reseason because of all the water that was added during the cooking process. The meat at this point is very bland, and that's the last thing that you want after such hard labor. After you've added all your seasoning, you're going to give it a good stir just to make sure that everything is properly distributed. And at this point, you should also do a little taste test, because now is when you will make the necessary adjustments. If you need a little bit more seasoning or not, or if it's okay. If it is, then you cover the pot and then you cook until the desired tenderness has been reached. Now is the time for the special guest, the butter beans. This is what kicks it up a notch. You can purchase any brand if you don't have access to a local Jamaican brand. They are sold in just about any regular grocery store. Now you'd want to add this about 5 minutes before the end because you do not want it to get too mushy. Now after 5 minutes, it should look exactly like this. As you can tell, the butter beans and the vegetables are still whole. The meat is fall off the bone tender, and the sauce is at the right consistency. Now you can finally relax and enjoy this awesome and tasty dish that you've just created. So go ahead and give it a try and let me know how it turned out. Leave your comments in the comment box. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you liked this video. And if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's video. What good? Till we see you next time, alright?